Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Stan in Gainesville, and today we're discussing distributing BMX, your report card, keeping the par bars in the air, my dog ate my homework, and stuck in the sticks, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. Welcome, everyone, to episode 407. And we're all trying to survive the fires out here in L.A. I just got back. Actually, I was in the Bahamas last weekend celebrating my best friend's 70th birthday. And that was a lot of fun. But our hearts are with our friends and colleagues who are directly affected by this fire. 3 people that I know personally, colleagues of mine, have lost their homes. Entire communities are destroyed. And I'm not, a lot of people are kind of meanly saying that these people deserve it because they're in Malibu or something like that. But there are a lot of neighborhoods of middle class and lower middle class people that have lost everything. And even if you're well off or, better off than most, it's horrible when your entire community is wiped out. A lot of people lost their pets. A lot of people, they lost their possessions. It makes you think that if you have important papers, you need to put them in someplace that's fireproof. You remember safe deposit boxes, guys?
Oh, sure.
I have one.
A lot of banks no longer have one. It's crazy.
Right.
I mean, the bank, they shut that. I said, well, that's kind of silly. So our thoughts and our best wishes go to all these people who have suffered, and let's hope the government comes through and protects these people and gives them some sort of way to rebuild. I don't know. What do you all think?
I think it's remarkable. It looks like, the images that we're seeing over here on this coast, it looks like, a Terminator movie. It's it's mind-boggling. And David's point. I mean, I know that Anne, our good friend, Lumen's sister, Anne Militello, was posting GoFundMe's for friends of hers, and I made some donations yesterday and to help people. I know that FEMA, it's only $44,000 to get you started to rebuild your life. It's like this. It's not to take care of everything. David's point about important documents. I've been dealing with that lately with some family business, and I have 2 cloud I have a little server in my house that if we had a fire, I'm picking up that little server. I've done it before during hurricanes and take it with me. It's all on the drives. And then I've got a cloud storage, and everything goes in both places. So those things are, and I think I'm going to print everything out that I had to do this week as well, is to have a hard copy. But it's mind-boggling. It makes me think of the Lahaina fire, at Maui. And probably there's multiple causes and multiple reasons. And what's really, really concerning is that the insurance companies, are pulling out of areas that are prone to these kinds of disasters. We experienced that in Florida. We're lucky we're grandfathered in, but we couldn't. State Farm, which is huge, one of the biggest, they're not writing homeowners insurance in Florida anymore.
Same in California. They stopped California as well.
And you sort of can't blame them, and because their problem is, people don't know that the insurance company has a boatload of money to cover losses, but then there's something called the reinsurer who insures the insurance company. So in the event of a devastating loss, the insurance company themselves can't cover the disaster. They go to their reinsurer, which in some cases is Berkshire Hathaway, is a reinsurer. But, and I like to think about this guy from the Netherlands who talks about flooding, like, don't build in dangerous areas, and so I don't know how dangerous LA is as a location relevant to the ocean and the winds and the dryness. And I don't know if it's a place that you would select as a safe place to build a city, but like New Orleans, that's going to be a problem. It's like below sea level.
It's under sea level.
It's under sea level, right? So I don't really, So I don't really know, but you can't just pick up LA and say we're not going to have a city here anymore. So it's my daughter was there until a couple of years ago. She just moved south to San Diego. And I know David, I was looking at the map, when I was showing the maps of the fires, I was thinking about David was the first person I was thinking about. Like, where is your lovely house in Long Beach relevant? how close are you to all of this stuff?
It's not because Long Beach is pretty flat. There's not a lot of canyons or hills or anything like that with a lot of foliage. It's a very metropolitan type city, and especially in the area that I live, which is really close to the ocean, it's just homes, just small homes. So that it doesn't affect me, but it does affect Lori, because Lori does live in the canyon 60 miles north of me, and we have fires all around us. It's crazy.
It strikes me that these embers, that the wind was carrying these burning twigs, and then they land on your roof, and your house is hot. It's like, and hurricane force winds.
Yeah, 100-mile-per-hour winds, and a lot of the planes that would fight these fires couldn't fly because the winds were so high.
They can't go in.
And even if they dropped their anti-fire repellent, it's going to
dissipate, right?
It dissipates.
We used to joke about, I live in one of the most, you're in Florida. Well, maybe, we have one big risk. It's the hurricanes, and flooding. That's one. You guys got you got three risks. You got fire, you got mudslides, you got earthquakes. I don't know, which is worse.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather have all of those instead of palmetto bugs. So
I don't have any palmetto bugs. We don't have that problem here.
And then Steve has tornadoes, so and ice storms.
Yep.
Onward to other news. URTA's coming up, Steve. You're going to URTA. Do you have your socks?
Well, this is the first year that URTA is paying for everything. They're paying for my hotel. They're paying for my airfare. They have a bottle of champagne waiting on me.
Why is that?
Wow, champagne.
Well,
what?
URTA is paying for your transportation.
Where are they getting that money?
They're even giving Teslas away. It's just everything you could possibly want.
You had me going for about 10 seconds.
It's a blistering 2 degrees in Chicago today. I can't wait to get there.
For those who are going to URTA looking for grad programs, you may want to consider another option, and that is the Hemsley internship. And the deadline for that is coming up at the end of this month. I think it's January 31st. And we're going to have Mark Stanley on to talk about it. Hopefully we can get him on next week. But I just want to give out some information for people who are interested in that. And all you have to apply for a Hemsley internship is you either have to have an undergraduate degree and or a graduate degree. All right. So they do take people who have graduated from undergraduate school. So I'm going to just read a quick blurb from the Hemsley internship, because I am a huge supporter of this. I've had a few Hemsley interns assist me on shows. The most latest was Maddie assisted me in San Francisco. And it is a great, great, great opportunity. So anyway, let me just read this real quickly. It says, the Hemsley Lighting Programs is thrilled to announce our annual Hemsley internship program for 2025. This will be the 41st year of the internship, and we are excited to continue to offer this opportunity. Applications will be accepted from January 15th, 2025 through January 31st, 2025. So the deadline's coming up in a couple of weeks. Interview for finalists will be held in New York on March 28th, 2025. We anticipate that we will be offering 2 internship experiences in 2025. One experience will begin in June and run through mid-August with the Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, working on several musicals with lighting designer Paul Miller. Boy, that would be thrilling. The second internship will begin in mid-July and continue until the end of February 2026. This internship provides the opportunity to work in a professional repertory situation with resident and guest designers at San Francisco Opera, New York City Ballet, and Alvin Ailey Dance Theater. A monthly stipend of $3,000 is provided in addition to travel expenses. Candidates should submit a cover letter, resume, a one-page statement of personal goals and anticipated benefits from the internship, and 3 letters of recommendation. There is no formal application form other than these submissions. Digital or paper applications are accepted at the addresses that I'm going to give you in a minute and must be received by January 31st, 2025. So get on it. Letters of reference may be emailed or supplied with the application by mail. The internship is offered to U.S. citizens only, and applicants must have finished their undergraduate or graduate training. The internship cannot be used for academic credit. The Hemsley Internship in Lighting honors the legacy of Gilbert Hemsley, one of my mentors, by providing a unique professional training experience to young designers as they begin their careers. To submit an application or for further information, please contact Mr. Mark Stanley, New York City Ballet, 20 Lincoln Center, New York City, New York, 10023. His phone number is 212-870-4205, or you can email him at hemsleylighting@gmail.com. That's HEMSLEYLIGHTING@gmail.com. I can't speak highly enough for this opportunity. So please, at least apply, and because you never know.
Can you imagine that you're off to work with Alvin Ailey and you're getting a 30 grand and you're getting an entry-level salary to be there while you're an intern? So all you got to worry about is finding a place to sleep, which is a lot, but almost everyone has a friend in the city they can couch surf with.
That's right. And one other thing, it's not like you're just sitting there watching.
Right.
I mean, Maddie was my number one assistant at San Francisco Opera. So that's really awesome. Okay. And she was fantastic. So let's move on. Dan, you have our first question today. How do you like that?
Yeah, well, it's not about design. How about that? It's about technology. So Trip in Georgia asks, what's the best way to distribute DMX? Ethernet, 5-pin, XLR, nodes, gateway, wireless, so many choices. Right. Well, the best way is to make sure you get it there, I suppose, from your console, your brain, to your fixture so you can do your art. It's a big conversation going on right now, and I keep learning different ways in which to do it more efficiently. So when you do like a network system, it was recommended to me on our projects that you just use a different range of numbers per position. So on the first electric, you might start with DMX addresses 100 through whatever, and then on second electric 200, then third electric 300, and so on and so forth around your space. So you're sort of broken out because there's plenty of addresses these days if you're doing it over a network system, which most people are. Then there's the old school, 5-pin. They have two universes coming out of your board, and you just daisy chain 5-pin XLRs. On our jobs, we're putting. Recently, we were asked the question. You guys are putting an Ethernet jack, which is carrying your DMX over network or Category 5 or 6 cable on your distribution raceways on electrics and so on, and then we put a portable node. So you plug the node in, and that translates the DMX to 5-pin, and off you go to your fixtures. Now they're suggesting to us, you could do that, but why not? We can transport DMX from a rack, where all your other stuff is, in your dimmer room or your, distribution room, right to the raceways, and then you can still have an Ethernet jack and plug a node in. So, okay. And the idea there was you don't want this sensitive hardware in the position. You're going to have it in a room locked away, and you're transporting the DMX, through conduit, out to the positions. And then, of course, there's wireless now, which for a while there, I was pretty sort of shy of that from a reliability standpoint. But a long time ago, bought a couple of show babies, and we saw that stuff going on in the Olympics and places where DMX has to be sent through the air. And it's remarkably robust. So is there a best way? I don't know, but I think one way to think about it is probably what I learned this week was to put the thing that generates the DMX in the safest location and then just push it out through the wire. And I think now, fixtures are coming not just with 5-pin in and out, but they're coming with Ethernet in and out. So you can just, use that kind of cable to go from one fixture to the other. So I don't know if there's a best way, but there's certainly more ways than there used to be to transmit what everybody will admit is a legacy protocol that is only unidirectional, and we'd like to have something better, but there's just too much of it out there, and it's not going away anytime soon.
I mean, I think the thing about things like this is everyone can be a naysayer. Everyone you see this on some of the forums online. It's like, today Grand MA is the worst board ever made. And tomorrow it's the best thing since, cornbread. So I think wireless DMX, sure, it has a problem every now and then, but no more so, I think, than a landline does. I can count our problems on our wireless system on one hand. I think Stan's got a better point, and that is keeping the driver locked away and hidden somewhere that a stage weight can't clonk it. I think that's the weak link, not the signal going out. We run, you've been here. We run a big show is probably 300 lights and, I don't know, 40 movers. And I mean, it's big for us. I don't know if I were doing Trans-Siberian, if we could ask them and see if they're wireless. But it's never failed us, really. It's given us pause for thought every now and then.
Let me say this: how this came up. We've got a project starting construction. We just looked at the submittals, and this theater has permanent circuitry, raceways, and so on and so forth. And the fellow who's doing the project manager reached out and said, you guys did a pretty good design because you put an Ethernet, a DMX net jack on every location, but you also ordered portable nodes, right? And I think everybody knows what a portable node is, right? Hopefully. And he said, what we would like to do for you is we'd like to put the DMX, rack mount your DMX and send it out to all of your positions in the same jacket that's, where your power lines go. It's no problem. And then you'll have it embedded. And then if they run out, we'll have one universe. And then when they run up for each position, and then if they ever run out, they can take a node and plug it into your Ethernet jack, and you've got both. And are you guys okay with that? Because you designed a system that's actually got both capabilities. And we said, yes, please do that, because we couldn't see a downside to them putting the DMX, they're called gateways, in the rack room. In the equipment rack rather than out in the theater. We've seen this happening in facilities and I just went to ETC architectural lighting training in October, and one of the things that they're doing now is when you need an LED driver, oftentimes the LED driver is mounted with the fixture, and then what if the fixture's up in a place you can't get to? So now the drivers are mounted in a place that you can just walk into a room. There's a whole wall of mounted LED drivers, and then the low voltage, as long as it's within the range, is just going out to the fixture. So when the driver goes bad, you don't have to go up on a ladder. You just walk into a room and take care of the driver. So I think there's a lot of this kind of thinking. The folks who are out there in the field doing installs are thinking differently. And the old days of, 2 universes of DMX and 5 pins coming out of your board, that's pretty old school now. And the fact that Steve's saying he's been doing it 10 years with very few problems says that wireless I think the new city theatrical stuff, I don't know what technology you were using, Steve, at your place, but they use this thing called signal hopping, where it kind of, it's very, very robust. The channels change so often, which minimizes the amount of bandwidth it uses. So there's a lot of advancements, but still, DMX is unidirectional, and we wish we've specified some robo spots which need the video, and so in the harness that we specify, we include the DMX, the Ethernet, and a video line so it has to be thought about. But wouldn't it be nice if it was all on the same wire?
Ron from Montana writes, as I apply for grad school, are my undergraduate grades important? Does my GPA have any meaning or weight with graduate schools? Well, there's a couple ways to answer that question. I think what you're going to find is that most graduate schools are looking for a minimum of 3.0. I do separate my applications into a 3.0 to 3.4. That's one pile, and 3.5 and up is another pile. And what I'm looking at when I look at a GPA, I'm looking at, is that a reflection of how you budget your time? So what I mean by that is generally I find people who have a better GPA, that 3.5 and up, are able to set aside time to do homework, to do projects, to still have a social life. They can manage their time better. People who have low GPAs, I have found, have a hard time getting their work turned in on time. Now, there's been a couple of exceptions to that. I had a student who showed up one day, just out of the blue, wanted to come to school here, and that student had a not the best GPA in the world. And we were talking, and the student said, I screwed up, and I need a second chance. So you weigh that also. And oddly enough, that student turned out to be one of the best students we've ever had and is happily working in New York and doing stuff on and off Broadway. They just needed a second chance. Some schools, it's out of the program's hands. So a lot of the schools on campus will have their own kind of standards, but the university then has a standard they can't dip below. So all of a sudden you're off to the registrar's office or off to a dean's office and they're having to make a case for you. So I don't know. How did you guys look at GPAs?
I think they're very important for the same reasons you mentioned, Steve, but you mentioned social life. I didn't have much of a social life when I was in school. I had no time because I loved doing everything I was doing. I loved building models. I loved doing research. And I spent most of my time doing theater and being in classes and doing homework. And we're going to get to that homework discussion a little later. Let's talk about. But it is true. Especially in grad school, you have to be prepared to be working your butt off in your academics and in your skill classes, because this is training for you for when you are in the profession, when, guess what? You're going to be working your butt off. You may not have much of a social life.
Or a butt.
Yeah, right, but seriously, I think it's very important. And like Steve said, if you're going to URTA, the school descriptions, it will say a minimum of a 3.0 GPA. If it's below in both at SMU, when I taught there, and also at Cal State Long Beach, if it's under 3, it's a battle to get you in. I don't think it was possible at SMU, at least not when I was there. And it was somewhat possible with a lot of work to get somebody in with below 3.0 at Cal State Long Beach. But usually we'd bring them in on probation. And if that GPA did not come up in a year or a semester, then they were gone. And that allows someone, like Steve says, who may have screwed up. Maybe they partied too much in undergrad, but now they're going to get serious because they're in grad school. They'll give them a chance. And if you get straight A's or 3 A's and a B, and then you've turned it around. But if you start pulling in C's, and in most grad programs, a C is failing. If you get a C in a class, you failed the class. Right? So you would have to get A's or B's. And if you get all B's, I'd be really worried. So that's how I feel about GPAs. Stan?
Yeah, I think you guys covered this pretty well. I'm in agreement with all of it. And I was just trying to think, what could I add? When I was teaching at UF, which has extremely high bar for undergrads, I mean, the turn-down rate is extraordinary. So it's really filled with undergrads who are the best of the best. They call it the Yale of the South. It's like a very elite institution. The graduate schools, like there was a big conversation about whether your GRE score would be considered coming in with the arts. Generally speaking, David mentioned the point I was going to say, which is, let's just say that the person that got the low GPA in undergrad might not be the same person that's now coming back to grad school. So in a way, it can be a little bit prejudicial if you only look at that. True, a 3.0 would be the benchmark, right, at Florida as well. We could do waivers. So we have done waivers, even with undergraduate students, for example, who don't really have the GPA, but then you look at their art and you look at their talent, and you look at their website, and wow, this is students highly motivated, and they just weren't good at, algebra or whatever it was. So I think it is a certain amount of case by case. But to Steve's point, I will amplify. When you're looking for somebody for this profession, you need somebody who has the discipline to start something and finish it and do it on time. And that GPA will speak to that. I was not the best student early on in my undergraduate career for a variety of reasons. And if I was sort of blocked, because of that, I probably would have become the person. I have a certain liberalness about that. I think you have to look at the individual case. But to answer Ron directly, do your best, right, to get the best GPA you can. And if you're not ready for undergraduate school, go work for a while. I used to tell some of my students, go work in a factory for a while. And after about 6 months, and you say, this is going to be my life, you'll come back to school more motivated. And when you're more motivated, you'll have a better GPA.
So Roxanne from Atlanta asks, I am a 42-year-old lighting designer who seems to be stuck designing for third-class regional theaters. I am so tired of having to take outside jobs to supplement the measly design fees I get from these small companies. I love designing, but it seems that the directors I work with at these theaters rarely hire me for larger gigs. Some of my friends are designing at large opera companies and some prestigious LORT theaters, and I am stuck in the sticks. Should I just give up and move on with my life? Wow. This is a question that a lot of people ask themselves, and it's really hard, whether you're a lighting designer or an actor, or a dancer or anybody in the arts in a highly competitive field with not that many opportunities to actually make a living, actually doing what you love doing. It can get very, very, very frustrating. I've known a lot of people who have gone through this, and many do leave the profession. I believe that if you're an artist and this is something that you love, then you should keep doing it. But maybe your expectations should be lowered as far as the type of theaters you're going to be working at. You never know who that director is going to be or when that's going to happen, who's going to take you to a much higher strata of the profession. It happened to me. I worked for very low budget opera companies when I first started, and I met a lot of directors, and I was fortunate that some of those directors wanted me to work for them again. And again, getting back to grades, it's because I know how to work hard, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't a task for me. It was pleasure for me. And I would always come up with ideas and things like that, and I was friendly, and and it was just fun. A lot of the directors are in the same boat that you're in, by the way. Those directors you're working for, they're not making much more than you are probably, and they have the same frustrations. So I don't say give it up if you love it. If you're not sure, then you probably should look at other things. But if you really love doing it, it's like giving up music. Why would you do that? I work as a lighting designer. I was an educator for many years. And up until like the last 20 or 30 years, it was hard to make it. If I was only doing design, it would be really hard for me to be able to survive in the way that I need to survive. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think they almost answered the question in that. And it was something to the effect of some of these directors have hired you to work in better theaters. So I think it's time to sit down with some of the people you've worked with more than once, who have actually wanted you to come back and work with them. And I would ask them, what do you think it's going to take to move to the next level? And the other thing, I think David's got a point about it takes a while to make connections. Maybe you're living in the wrong city. Maybe Atlanta, I think, is not where you need to be. Maybe you need to be where there's more opportunity. Maybe you need to be in a Chicago or a New York or a Philadelphia. Maybe you need to be back on the East Coast where there's a train to get you around. Maybe you've tapped the market out and there's just no potential growth there for you except at one or two spaces. And again, I think he's got a point. Directors hire designers. So until you can get those directors who are working at better theaters to bring you on board, they're held hostage to producers also who say, no, we've got a perfectly good lighting designer here in Orlando, and we're going to use them on your show. We're not going to bring in someone from Atlanta or Dallas. So there's a lot of pieces to this that's not all on you. So I think it's time to have some honest conversations with people and see what they think you should do.
So I'll chime in a little bit. I think I agree with Steve, particularly about location, that I had a friend who was a scenic designer, was in Atlanta for many years, and was first in Houston and then Atlanta, and was having a real hard time sort of making a living being a freelance set designer. I just did a little quick, let's just put some data to this. In the field of stage lighting, designers comprise, now we're talking about 100% of all the people working in lighting, in the theatrical lighting world. 10 to 15% are designers, approximately. Approximately 10% are programmers. Approximately 15% are master electricians. And 40 to 50% are lighting technicians. And about 10 to 15% are riggers and stagehands, and then another 5 or 10% are other roles like production managers and such. So you're in like a 10 to 15% category that you want to fit into. I would say that if you want to be around lighting, if you're like David or Stephen, you're an artist and you're an artist only, then you got to sort of make some moves and have that conversation that Steve was talking about. If you are willing to say, I just really want to work in the lighting world, I think that's entirely feasible. And you have to sort of expand the way you're framing your career. So I think it's a rethink. I mean, I love lighting myself. I thought of myself as an artist and a technologist always. I liked both. I just wanted to be around both. And I'm not, and there's design and technology as well. So I don't think you have to have that's not a hard line. But some people are 100% artists. And if that's who you are, then I think that honest conversation is in order. And if you can broaden your framework, then I think you have a better shot, because trying to squeeze yourself into that 10, 15%, as David said, that's tough. That's a tough place to be.
You've mentioned theaters. Maybe it's time to look at entertainment and not just theaters. I know this sounds crazy. I'm telling you, it worked. I was living in Nashville, which is certainly, I'm telling you to leave Atlanta, so that I'm in Nashville. I just picked up the phone book one day, and I decided I was going to call everybody who could use me as a lighting designer. And one goofy thing was I called every advertisement agency in Nashville. And probably a third of them, 25% of them, agreed to see me and chat with me. And we chatted about industrials, the clients that they were producing industrials for and their advertisement campaigns. And that led me to 3 major contracts. So you kind of have to do some legwork too. And go through the phone book. Forget about theater. Don't look for theater, dance, or opera. Look for everybody else who could use you as a lighting designer, and get in touch with them and see if you can build yourself a business around half a dozen different things that you do and do well. I mean, lighting is kind of lighting. That is kind of lighting.
And instead of a phone book, because they don't make those anymore, you may want to check the internet.
Google. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, go down to the phone booth, get take some change with
booth,
you.
25 cents a call.
I miss the phone booth. I mean, I have been there where there's no cell signal, and I'm going, where's the damn phone booth?
There are no phone booths left anymore. That's a
I know.
shame. I liked phone booths. They were fun. But hey, good thing we don't need Superman around anymore, because he would always go into the phone booth to change, remember?
We recently rewatched that movie, and he walks up to one of those stand-up phone booths.
Right, he says, what am I going to do?
What do I do with this, right? Yeah, we just watched that movie. It's
really funny, because on the plane ride home last night, Lori had never seen, believe it or not, Back to the Future.
Oh, really?
She'd never seen that movie,
wow.
Right. And she grew up in the 80s, so she, that was her time, right? And she got such a kick out of that film.
It's a great film.
What a clever film that is. It really is very well
Michael
done.
J. Fox just got honored at the
he deserves
it was the Medal of Freedom.
Right. By the way, Lori's uncle was also, he didn't get the Medal of Freedom, he got the Medal of Technology from the president for developing the cell phone.
The cell phone.
That's a small thing.
Joe Biden called me and asked me if he could borrow $20. And I said, sure, Joe.
Okay.
All right. Well, you are listening to this production of Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers and Light Talk is sponsored by
the American Society of Dance Designers. As a kid, I was scrawny, weak, and prone to illness. I thought my destiny was to become a meek little theater lighting designer, timidly hanging Fresnels up and out at 45, cool to the left, warm to the right. But after a few summers sweating through stock theater, I discovered something profound. I could be tough, scrappy, unstoppable. I took pride in lugging 10-foot box trusses solo and laughing in the face of thunderstorms. Scoops on the floor, handled. Asymmetrical lighting, mastered. Live gel changes during blackouts. Bring it on. All-night focus calls, please, I'll do it standing on one leg. Yes, I was ready to move on, and then I discovered dance. I still remember the day I started my career as a lighting designer for dance. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I imagined elegance, grace, maybe a little glamour, beautiful women, athletic men, rich, full symphonic music. Instead, I was met with endless rehearsals, speedy rewrites just before the curtain, and dancer droppings hanging on my booms. Sunlight, forget it. My world became black stages and learning to focus in 5 languages and faking in 3 more. As gigs turned into shows and shows blurred into endless seasons, I had to face the ultimate question. Am I tough enough to survive as a dance lighting designer? The answer required some deep reflection, which led me to 3 basic questions that would make or break my resolve. Number 1, can I stay positive? When the boom tips over, do you calmly stand it up and refocus, or panic and Google how to become a barista? When the console crashes before the Black Swan solo, do you grab a couple of subs and busk like a rock star, or do you curl up in a fetal position muttering, why me? Why now? Number 2, can I adjust to environmental toughness? Can you handle weekly jet lag crossing 5 time zones and living out of a carry-on? Can you light a contemporary dance piece in a theater where half the fixtures don't work, you don't understand the language du jour, and your lighting intern left all the gel on the bus that just drove away? And finally, can I endure small discomforts? Can you make peace with a taped-up headset that's slowly molding your ear into modern art? And most importantly, can you keep a straight face when the choreographer says, can you just make the lights more magical? If you answered yes to all the above, congratulations, you are officially tough enough to be a dance lighting designer. Welcome to the wild, beautiful world of flickering dreams, endless light cues, and artistic directors who ask, can we get more pink in the white? This has been a message from the American Society of Dance Designers.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sounds of those lovable monkeys and ducks and iguanas bouncing around Stan's living room means that once again it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about how much homework is too much homework for an undergraduate theater design student. Well, it's funny. We were talking about GPAs. I mean, it's almost a catch-22, right? Give up too much homework, your GPA may go down. You have too little homework, you're not going to learn anything. So what do you think? What do you guys think? How much is too much?
Well, how do you measure it?
I think let's talk about how many hours it takes to do a typical evening's homework for the next day.
So there is a metric for that. There is a metric for that. So
well, there's the mistake. You're doing your homework the night before.
You're right. I mean, ideally, you'd be like organizing your homework to do a little bit for each class every night, right? So let's just say, on a typical night, how much homework should there be for a student?
Let me just say more broadly first. There's a metric that we used, and I think it's pretty well accepted. For every credit hour a course is, a student should spend 3 hours that week outside of class. So if you have a 3-hour class, 3 hours of credit, it would be expected that you would be spending 9 hours per week outside of class on the subject matter for that class. So if a full load in graduate school is 9 hours, as it used to be where I taught, so 9 times 3, right, am I doing the arithmetic right?
No, you're talking graduate. We're talking undergraduate.
Oh,
we're talking 15 credit hours.
Oh, okay, but the same rule applies for undergraduate. So 15 hours.
That's 45 hours.
So 45 hours should be spent out of class per week, which is like a full-time job on your academics. Now, you add rehearsals and preparation for production and so on. It becomes but I think that's in line with pre-med people or scientists or computer science. That's not outrageous. So that's sort of a general sort of guideline for it.
I agree. And in graduate school, it's actually even more.
Right.
Because at SMU, I would be up in that design studio every single night with most all of my colleagues, working until 4 or 5 in the morning for our 9 a.m. class.
You know who's worse than us? What my experience, the med students are worse than us, and the architects never go home. The studio lights are on. The architects are worse than we are.
Yeah, and that was just the way it was. I mean, to succeed at SMU back then, and again, we're talking about late 70s, so, now I'm sure Steve is really, really kind to his students. But back then they weren't. But we were trained really well. You have to be that disciplined and that committed to be able to survive the theater. It's sad, but it's true. Now I'm talking graduate again. I think it's different for undergrad. Steve, talk to us.
I'm considering two things. I think the big thing that's changed since you were here is that our design classes now run at a decent hour. We start at 9:30 in the morning, but the class goes from 9:30 until 5:30. So you are in set design class all day except for lunch break. And then we fold skills and presentations and discussions into that. I think where people get into trouble with their homework is they simply don't do it, or they put it off to the last second. And it's hard to be creative. It's hard just to say, I'm going to be creative Wednesday night and do all of my drawings. You might have a headache Wednesday night. The muse may not be hitting you Wednesday night to do your sketches. So I think, we argue the same thing, that homework is the equivalent of a full-time job. We don't take students who have full-time jobs. I know that's harsh, but they can't come to grad school and have a full-time job at the same time. It just doesn't work. And that makes it, difficult. But the ones who survive it kind of are out there living life by their own standards, because they have kind of mastered what it is. And I think too much homework. I think it's how they manage their homework. If I'm giving you a costume sketch to do, and I say take an egg timer, and you've got 15 minutes for each little pencil drawing sketch, and when the thing goes ding, you put the pencil down and start the next sketch. So I think sometimes people just get trapped in a kind of an endless loop of drawing something or plotting something, and they can't move on to the next part of the project. So I think the thing about homework, too, is it teaches you how to manage projects once you leave school. I think it also, if you can master it, it teaches you how to run a small business. And that's what you are, a business owner. And you've got to set aside time for business. I don't know if that directly answers how much homework is too much. I think most people who are teaching have gone through the process of a graduate school. Some graduate schools are better than others, but they have kind of survived it, and they know what's capable of being done, particularly if you want to work on a fairly high level in this industry. The thing is, you have to have a plan. If you don't have a plan on how you're going to accomplish it, then, you're drowning because you have too many things to do on a Sunday night for a Monday morning class.
I think also we can't really look back at what we did as undergrads and grads because the tools that we now have to create designs make it so much easier and faster and efficient. Okay? Yes, you have to learn the technology, but, it takes a lot longer to hand draft a plot than to draft a light plot in Vectorworks or whatever program you're using. Same thing with 3D software and artwork and stuff like that. And just going to the library took a lot of time, where nowadays you just go into Google and do research just doing it in Google if you had to. So I think that the calculation may be a little different now, or our expectations are a lot higher now because we all know how long it takes. It's a lot easier to do that nowadays because, again, the process is easier.
Absolutely. After drafting the light plot 3 times a night with, the rough plot, what you think is the finished plot, and then going back and making a clean, if you're really crazy, you make a clean ink plot for class the next day. Oh my God, yes. Give me Vectorworks any day of the week.
I just want to throw this out there. So there's this happens in all industries. So there's this notion that when efficiency increases, which I think is David's point, that we have a more efficient set of systems. But unfortunately, we never really see the gains of that efficiency because then the expectations rise. So productivity rises at the same level as efficiency. So you never really capture the efficiency. And this has been talked about in the LED world. Oh, LEDs are so much more efficient than an incandescent lamp. So we've captured it. We can need so much less electricity, right? Well, that's the notion that proves out not to be the case, because then you get more light in places where there never was light before. Parts of the world start using LEDs because blah, 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 blah. Same thing with automobiles. Oh, we can make automobiles more efficient. You know how many more cars there are in China now than there were just 10 years ago? So you haven't really captured the efficiency. So I appreciate the point. It's more efficient, but then are we asking the students to produce more and to produce better? So I don't know. I've not studied it, but that notion of efficiency increases, that you should capture that, but it doesn't often work out that way.
To respond to that, if you look in the medical industry over the years and decades, centuries, med school, people were learning techniques that we would consider barbaric now. But nowadays, because of obviously technology and science and just understanding things better, our expectations are higher, so now people survive a lot of things they weren't surviving 20 years ago. So those expectations do rise, and I think it's the same way in art. Mm-hmm. I think that our expectations should rise. If I was producing the type of work now that I produced back in, like, let's say I'm a grad student now, right? And I was producing the same quality work that I was producing back in 1978.
No way.
The people would laugh at me, it'd be ridiculous. I wouldn't be able to do it. So yeah, I think that everybody's expectations raise because the technology is so much better and the art has evolved so much.
Yeah, I want to pick up on your medical metaphor because this struck me just the other day because I was at 2 medical appointments yesterday and my doctor is just fantastic, right? And I was talking how great he was, and I said, I want to have friends of mine who are not happy with their doctors to come see you. And they said, forget it. This clinic is full. We are not taking any new patients. So people are living longer. The medical industry has grown, and you would think more people would have access to medicine. But now there's so many of us that we have a shortage of doctors and nurses. So I'm just saying that sometimes the efficiencies don't always turn out to be efficiencies, is all I'm.
You can also, I was thinking that just this weekend, the idea about budgeting your time. I don't know if you, I think it was the Philadelphia Eagles were playing this weekend, and I believe it was Brown is the player. So NFL player, got a busy day any way you cut it. And so how does he manage his time? He made the international news when the camera zoomed in on him when he came off the field. He picked up Jim Miller's book, Inner Excellence. So when he was off the field, he was reading Inner Excellence. And
You're kidding me.
No, then he would put
That's
put his book down and go in and play. Then he'd come back and read it. So,
That explains it all, right?
I mean, if you want it, and it's not a book with a bunch of pictures in it. I mean, if you really want it, you'll find time to do it.
All right. Well, I think this was a very interesting discussion, gentlemen. But you know something? We have one more question to cover, and Steve has that question.
It's Lonnie in British Columbia, and Lonnie says, "How many safety cables do you put on a par bar?" My ME says 2. I say 8. I guess it depends on your par bar, doesn't it? If you have just an old hunk of pipe and you slapped 6 par cans on it with C-clamps, yeah, I think every light needs a safety cable, plus an extra 2 to make sure the bar, when it gives away, is held on there. So yeah, if that's what you're putting up there, then kind of a cowboy par bar, yeah, I would say 8. But if you're using a par bar like most of us do, which have par cans are mounted into it, hardwired. I mean, if it's a Thomas par bar on a truss, it can't fall out of the truss. It has runners to hold it in place. But 2, 1 for each C-clamp. You can do whatever you want to do. But I would say 8 if you're making the damn thing yourself, and 2 if you're getting a fancy one.
This is the perfect question to say, all the opinions on this show, blah, 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 blah. This is a perfect disclaimer.
We don't know anything about this. So
the only opinions expressed on this show are what? What is it that we say?
Are usually from a point of delirium. So, yeah. So there you go. I don't even know what a par bar is. So
it's a bar of pars.
It's a par of bars, and and if you're using an old par 64 bar, it'll probably be heavier than if you're using an LED par. So there you go. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk or hanging some par bars. Who knows? You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk Insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
However, if you hang your par bar and you don't use the right number of safety cables and you decide to litigate us, the Snoop Group will protect...
Wait, you forgot a part. It falls and hits somebody on the head.
Right, so don't worry, Steve. Steve is safe because the Snoop Group with the legal team of Watson, Leitner, and Beam will defend us until our retirement funds and any other funds we might have will be depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Gainesville, Long Beach, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of par bars.
Light Talking Guys, broadcasting this questionable lumen knowledge and a little bit of humor sprinkled in around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.